So, good morning to everybody. And I would like to begin by warmly thanking the Deputy Minister Marabian for being here with us, and thanking Maria Bagramian for having organized all this and having given to us the possibility to organize such an important panel for discussing the problem of the cultural heritage and the politics of preservation in a time of crisis. Within a context of this so interesting and important conference where we had a lot of intellectual inspiration. And a heartfelt thanks also to our distinguished guests. Thank you for accepting to come here to Armenia and to join this panel. I'm indeed very happy to welcome here in Armenia. And I look forward to our conversation on how we should protect, represent, and negotiate our precious cultural heritage in contexts which are increasingly shaped by crisis and transformation. Our discussion will be guided by a few core questions. What does preservation mean, and how can it be manipulated when a heritage is used to divide? How do international and local actors navigate conflict zones? What legal, digital, and discursive tools do we have at our disposal, and where do they fall short? So we will begin with an introductory address by Mr. Tigran Baghdasaryan, the head of the Division of UNESCO and Multicultural Cultural and Education Cooperation at the Armenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia. Mr. Baghdasaryan has long-term been engaged in Armenia's multilateral cultural diplomacy, working to strengthen international cooperation in the fields of education, science, and heritage. His division serves as a key interface between Armenia's cultural institutions and the global community, including UNESCO and other international frameworks for heritage protection. Mr. Baghdasaryan, thank you for being here at UPass today. The floor is yours. Please come and reach us.
Շնորհակալություն։ Հարգելի գործընկերներ, պատվելի հյուրեր, Իգնակ եւ Ֆարնայք, ինձ համար մեծ պատիվ է Հայաստանում ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի ազգային հանձնաժողովի եւ Հայաստանի արտաքին գործերի նախարարության անունից ներածական խոսքով դիմել այսօրվա քննարկման մասնակիցներին։ Նախ եւ առաջ թույլ տվեք երախտիկի խոսքեր հղել Հայաստանի ամերիկյան համալսարանին այսօրվա ամենաարդիական թեմաներից մեկի՝ ճգնաժամերի պայմաններում ազգային ինքնության հարցերին նվիրված գիտաժողով կազմակերպելու եւ դրա շրջանակներում մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանության խնդիրներին նվիրված քննարկում նախաձեռնելու կապակցությամբ։ Այսօրվա աշխարհաքաղաքական բարդ պայմաններում ազգային ինքնություն ավելի ու ավելի հաճախ է ենթարկվում հարձակումների, որի հիմնական եղանակներից մեկը մշակութային ժառանգության թիրախավորումն է, հուշարձանների ոչնչացման, վանդալիզմի կամ ինքնության խեղաթյուրման միջոցով։ Մշակութային ինքնության ժխտումը կիրառվում է որպես գործիք միջազգային կայունությունը խաթարելու համար։ Ստիպված ենք նաև արձանագրել, որ գոյություն ունեցող միջազգային կանխարգելիչ իրավական մեխանիզմները եւ մասնագիտական կազմակերպությունների ներուժը բավարար չեն ժառանգության վրա հարձակումները կանխելու համար։ Նույնիսկ ՄԱԿ-ի Արդարադատության միջազգային դատարանի պարտադիր իրավական ուժ ունեցող որոշումները հաճախ անտեսվում են, ստեղծելով վտանգավոր նախադեպեր, որոնք սպառնում են մշակութային պաշտպանության գլոբալ համակարգին եւ արտացոլում միջազգային բազմակողմ ինստիտուտների եւ մեխանիզմների թուլացումը։ Ցավոք, մեր տարածաշրջանն անմասն չի մնացել այս հարձակումներից, ինչի վկայությունն է այն, որ Լեռնային Ղարաբաղի հազարամյակների հարուստ պատմություն ունեցող հայկական ժառանգությունն այսօր շարունակում է գտնվել ոչնչացման եւ ինքնության խեղաթյուրման վտանգի առջեւ։ Այս իրողությունները մղում են Հայաստանին աջակցելու մշակութային ժառանգության միջազգային մեխանիզմների ու մասնագիտական ինստիտուտների կարողությունների ամրապնդմանը։ Այս տեսանկյունից կենտրոնական տեղ ենք հատկացնում ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի հետ համագործակցությանը։ Մասնավորապես, Հայաստանն աջակցում է Լեռնային Ղարաբաղ անկախ առաքելություն գործուղելու մասին ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի գլխավոր տնօրենի առաջարկին։ ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ն Հայաստանի խնդրանքով արագ արձագանքեց Լեռնային Ղարաբաղից բռնի տեղահանված երեխաների կրթական խնդիրների հասցեագրման հարցում մի շարք փորձագիտական առաքելությունների եւ դրամաշնորհների ծրագրերի միջոցով։ Ներկայումս Հայաստանն ակտիվ երկխոսության մեջ է կազմակերպության հետ նաեւ Լեռնային Ղարաբաղից բռնի տեղահանված փախստականների ոչ նյութական մշակութային ժառանգության պահպանության հարցերով։ Հայաստանը կարևոր տեղ է հատկացնում մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանության գլխավոր միջազգային մեխանիզմի զինված հակամարտությունների ժամանակ մշակութային արժեքների պաշտպանության մասին 1954 թվականի Հաագայի կոնվենցիայի և նրա լրացուցիչ արձանագրությունների լիարժեք միջազգային իրականացմանը։ 2023 թվականին ընտրվելով զինված ընդհարումների դեպքում մշակութային արժեքների պաշտպանության հարցերով ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի կոմիտեի անդամ, Հայաստանն էլ ավելի նպատակամղված է աշխատում այս ուղղությամբ։ Այսպես, նախորդ տարվա հոկտեմբերին կոնվենցիայի 70-ամյակի կապակցությամբ Երևանը հյուրընկալեց նոր և զարգացող տեխնոլոգիաների օգնությամբ մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանությանը նվիրված համաժողով, որն աչքի ընկավ միջազգային լայն մասնակցությամբ։ Հայաստանն ինքն էլ նպատակադրված է էլ ավելի լայն օգտագործել կոնվենցիայի ու լրացուցիչ արձանագրությունների ընձեռած հնարավորությունները, ինչպես օրինակ ուժեղացված պաշտպանության գործիքակազմն է։ Եթե այսօր Հայաստանը միայն մեկ հուշարձան ունի կոնվենցիայի ներքո ուժեղացված պաշտպանության կարգավիճակ՝ Գեղարդի վանական համալիրը, ապա մոտ ապագայում մենք նախատեսում ենք այդ ցանկում գրանցել նաև Տաթևի վանական համալիրը, իսկ ավելի ուշ ավելացնել նաև նոր հուշարձաններ։ Հայաստանն իր ջանքերը չի սահմանափակում միայն 1954 թվականի կոնվենցիայով և մտադիր է նպաստել ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի մյուս մշակութային մեխանիզմների ամրապնդմանը ևս։ Այսպես օրինակ, ընդամենը մի քանի օր առաջ Հայաստանն ընտրվեց մշակութային ինքնաարտահայտման ձևերի բազմազանության պաշտպանության և խրախուսման մասին ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի 2005 թվականի կոնվենցիայի միջկառավարական կոմիտեի անդամ։ Հայաստանը վերջին տարիներին սկսել է նաև ՅՈՒՆԵՍԿՕ-ի համաշխարհային ժառանգության նախնական ցանկի թարմացման գործընթաց, որպես սկզբունք ընտրելով Հայաստանի հարուստ և բազմազան մշակութային շերտը արտացոլող հուշարձանների գրանցումը։ Այսպես, նախորդ տարի նախնական ցանկում գրանցվեցին Տիրին-Կատարի հնագույն վիշապաքարերը, իսկ այս տարի Հայաստանը գրանցման է ներկայացրել Կառնիի հելլենիստական տաճարը և Երևանի ուրարտական հարուստ ժառանգությունը։ Մենք ձգտում ենք խորացնել համագործակցությունը նաև ոլորտի այլ դերակատարների հետ։ Նախորդ տարիներին մենք համագործակցության դրական փորձ ենք կուտակել ԱԼԻՖ-ի, Կապույտ Վահանի, Եվրոպա Նոստրայի, ICOMOS-ի, ICOM-ի և այլ կազմակերպությունների հետ։ Ավելին, Հայաստանը ձգտում է ոչ միայն հասցեագրել ոլորտում սեփական կարիքները, այլև իր կուտակած փորձագիտական ներուժով աջակցել այլ պետություններին ևս։ Այս առումով կարելի է առանձնացնել վերականգնել Մոսուլի ոգին ծրագրի շրջանակներում Մատենադարանի փորձագետների ներգրավումը Իրաքում, ինչպես նաև Հայաստանի աջակցությունը Լիբանանում հակամարտության հետևանքով վնասված մշակութային ժառանգության վերականգնմանն ուղղված ծրագրերին, որոնք իրականացնում է միջազգային Կապույտ Վահանը։ Այս թեմայի մասին խոսելիս չենք կարող չշեշտել այն կարևոր դերակատարումը, որ ունեն միջազգային մասնագիտական ոչ կառավարական կազմակերպությունները, ակադեմիական համայնքը և քաղաքացիական հասարակության ներկայացուցիչները մշակութային ժառանգության դեմ իրականացվող հանցագործությունների արձանագրման, մշտադիտարկման և կանխարգելման հարցում։ Հանդես գալով մասնագիտական անկախ և ապաքաղաքական դիրքերից, նման կառույցների և գործիչների ձայնը շատ հաճախ ավելի լսելի ու ազդեցիկ է։ Հետևաբար, նման ինստիտուտների կարողությունների հզորացումը և ավելի բարձր ու վճռական ձայնով խոսելը մեծապես կնպաստի աշխարհում մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանությանը։ Հայաստանի համար մեկ այլ նոր կարևոր ուղղություն է մշակութային ժառանգության վրա կլիմայի ու շրջակա միջավայրի ազդեցությունը։ Ինչպես շատերը տեղյակ եք, Հայաստանը հաջորդ տարի հյուրընկալելու է կենսաբազմազանության կոնվենցիայի կողմերի համաժողով COP17-ը։ Այս ձևաչափը մենք ևս օգտագործելու ենք կենսաբազմազանության հիմնախնդիրների տեսանկյունից մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանության հարցերը քննարկելու համար։ Եվ կցանկանայի օգտվել այս առիթից Երևանում կայանալիք COP17-ին այսօր այստեղ ներկա փորձագիտական համայնքի ակտիվ մասնակցությունը խրախուսելու համար։ Եզրափակելով խոսքս կցանկանայի վերահաստատել, որ մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանությունը կարևոր տեղ է զբաղեցնում Հայաստանի արտաքին քաղաքականության օրակարգում։ Այն իր ուրույն տեղն ունի նաև տարածաշրջանում տևական և ամուր խաղաղության հաստատման ուղղությամբ Հայաստանի գործադրած ջանքերում։ Խաղաղությունը ոչ միայն կհանգեցնի տարածաշրջանի պետությունների տնտեսական զարգացմանը, այլև կնպաստի տարածաշրջանում մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանությանը, տարածաշրջանում ապրող ժողովուրդների միջև միջմշակութային երկխոսության և տարբեր ինքնությունների հանդեպ փոխադարձ հարգանքի ամրապնդմանը։ Վերջում կցանկանայի նաև ողջունել այսօրվա քննարկման բոլոր մասնակիցներին, բոլոր մասնակից խոսնակներին, ընդգծելով հավաքված պանելի բացառիկ ներկայացուցչական կազմը։ Վստահ եմ, այսօրվա միջոցառումը մեզ խոստանում է հարուստ, ընդգրկուն եւ անկեղծ քննարկում, որը թույլ կտա մեզ գեներացնել նոր գաղափարներ եւ մատնանշել մշակութային ժառանգության պաշտպանության նոր ուղղություններ։ Շնորհակալություն։
Thank you very much, Mr. Baghdasaryan. And it's now time to begin our roundtable. And indeed, as you said, there is here a big richness, as we have the representative of a very diverse landscape of international institutions working at the highest level for the protection and preservation of cultural heritage. The series of crises that we have experienced in the last years made it increasingly clear that cultural heritage is not only the concern of scholars, but it holds deep social significance. So by interrogating the political dimension of preservation, I would like to explore with all of you how memory can be protected without becoming politicized, and where is the line between conservation and reinterpretation. How can preservation be conducted in a way that heals rather than reshapes memory? And how can contested monuments become platform for understanding rather than sites of division? It is also of great interest for us to reflect on the tools and limits of international engagement, how the international institutions navigate the diplomatic and operational challenges of working in sensitive environments, and what diplomatic, technical, or financial instruments they can bring to support a balanced approach. Finally, this panel would consider how meaningful interaction between international institutes and grassroots organizations can contribute to peace building, dialogue, and cultural continuity. CIRE has recently completed a survey of Armenian heritage organizations, revealing a rich and creative landscape that could be further leveraged to foster inclusive participation, mutual understanding, and even reconciliation across divided communities. And as we mentioned, civil society, I would like to start by giving the floor to Professor Hermann Partzinger, that in addition to leading the most influential civil society network dedicated to cultural heritage in Europe, Europa Nostra, Professor Partzinger is a distinguished archaeologist and historian, is the former president of the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation, and a member of numerous international academies. His work bridges scholarship and advocacy, and his voice has been central in shaping European cultural policy. Professor Partzinger, the floor is yours.
Dear Guyana, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to be in Armenia. The first time I worked for more than 25 years in the countries of the former Soviet Union as an archaeologist, 20 years in Siberia, in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan. Georgia I know very well, but for Armenia it's the first time, so it's really a pleasure to be here. Well, the topic which we are discussing today, of course, is very important. In an age of overlapping political, environmental and humanitarian crisis, cultural heritage cannot be treated as an afterthought. It is no longer a luxury or a passive record of the past. It is an active and often contested terrain embedded in struggles over memory, identity, and power. And precisely for this reason, it carries a unique potential to either deepen divisions or enable reconciliation, to silence or to give voice. We have seen too often that the destruction of heritage is not merely collateral damage, it is intentional. It may sometimes be used to assert domination, erase belonging, and suppress history. This is tragically evident in the Middle East, in Ukraine right now, and here in the South Caucasus. In places like Nagorno-Karabakh, heritage risks being manipulated to assert exclusive narratives, legitimize territorial claims, and deny the multi-ethnic, multicultural reality of these lands. This is a weaponization of memory. Yes, heritage, if approached with honesty and care, can also be a source of peace. It can serve as a foundation for rebuilding communities, for listening to difference, and for stitching together the complex histories we inherit. At Europa Nostra, we believe that preservation must begin with a shared ethical commitment, that cultural heritage belongs to all of us, not to one nation, not to one political power, but to the human story we tell together. Over the past month, in the context of the European Heritage Hub, a EU-funded pilot project, Europa Nostra has partnered with CIRE to map civil society organizations working on cultural heritage across Armenia and the Armenian diaspora. This research, soon to be made public, reveals a remarkable tapestry of dedication. Despite limited resources, Armenian NGOs are deeply engaged in heritage documentation, education, conservation, and community memory. Many operate with fewer than 5 paid staff. Most rely on volunteers and still manage to carry out important work, often in isolation. And yet it is precisely this grassroots energy that holds the key to resilient cultural systems. Among the organizations surveyed, around 12.5% are primarily focused on Nagorno-Karabakh. In the wake of the recent forced displacement, these groups face not only the loss of access to material heritage sites, but also the risk of intangible heritage, language, rituals, oral traditions being dispersed, diluted, or forgotten. The challenge is urgent. How do we help communities in exile preserve the cultural threads that anchor them to place, memory, and identity? And how can the international community support such efforts without politicizing them, without reproducing the very tensions we seek to overcome? The answer, I believe, lies in strategic cooperation, but also in humility. International organizations like Europa Nostra must not only bring resources or visibility, we must listen, adapt, and co-create solutions. This is why we are proud to be working alongside Armenian civil society in supporting the creation of an Armenian Heritage Hub, a permanent structure to support endangered heritage, foster capacity building, and promote cultural cooperation as a form of peace building. For over 6 decades, Europa Nostra has worked to protect Europe's cultural and natural heritage. Through our 7 Most Endangered program, developed with the European Investment Bank Institute, we direct attention to sites at immediate risk, like Ereğuruk and Arakelots. Through the European Heritage Awards, run in cooperation with the European Commission, we highlight exemplary practices across the continent. And now, through the European Heritage Hub, we are testing new models of collaborative action that stretch beyond borders and disciplines. But we must go further. If we are serious about transforming preservation into a political force for good, we need new coalitions. Therefore, I propose the creation of a European and international task force on heritage in crisis zones. This body, composed of organizations like World Monuments Fund, Blue Shield, Heritage for Peace, Getty Conservation Center, institutes, ALIPH, ICOMOS, UNESCO and others, could have a dual mandate to monitor threats to tangible and intangible heritage in conflict and post-conflict contexts, and to serve as a neutral technical platform for mediation, documentation and capacity building, especially in cases where politicization blocks bilateral engagement. Such a group could act as a trusted third party, offering inclusive scientific cooperation and providing urgently needed mechanisms of dialogue where others fail. It would not duplicate existing tools, but fill the gaps where diplomacy stalls and heritage suffers. We must also place cultural heritage in the broader picture of planetary transformation. Climate change is rapidly becoming one of the greatest threats to our cultural landscapes and historic sites. But heritage also holds part of the solution. At the COP28 in Dubai, Europa Nostra helped in launching the ministerial group of Friends for Culture-Based Climate Action, in collaboration with the Climate Heritage Network. This is not a symbolic gesture. It reflects our conviction that traditional knowledge systems, local materials, and sustainable practices embedded in heritage can support a just ecological transition. To sum up, cultural heritage is not simply about protecting the past. It is about imagining a future. It is about resilience, not as nostalgia, but as action. It is about listening especially to those who have lost their homes, but not their stories. In this sense, European and Armenian civil society is not just a stakeholder. It is a model, a force for transformation, and a partner that deserves the full solidarity of Europe. Europa Nostra is honored to walk this path with you. Let us not merely defend heritage. Let us activate it as a source of connection, of empathy, and of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Prasinger, for this powerful reminder that cultural heritage can be both a casualty and a catalyst in times of crisis. This brings us to the key issue of the protection of heritage, which are the instruments that can be used, and I'm pleased to give the floor to somebody who can both give us insights from an international, but also for more local and field-based perspective. Seda Grigorian, Chair of Blue Shield Armenia. She's a journalist and cultural heritage advocate with extensive experience in civil society and international cooperation. And has been actively engaged in protecting vulnerable heritage in Armenia, particularly in border zones and post-conflict areas. Seda, we are very glad to have you here. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Dear guests, hello, and dear Gayane and dear Sire, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this prestigious panel alongside with your distinguished guests. With my talk, I will present the activities undertaken by Blue Shield Armenia, which cross over in some parts with what already has been presented by Tigran Baghdasaryan. Cultural heritage is not just about stones, manuscripts, or churches. It is about human dignity. It is about identity, belonging, and the right to memory. And in times of crisis, it becomes both more vulnerable and more meaningful. I would like to bring this famous quote by Heinrich Heine from one of his plays, where he says, "Where they burn books, they will in the end burn people too." Here we understand the direct connection and link between the cultural heritage, its preservation, and the preservation of lives and the rights of the people who own it. In Armenia and across the South Caucasus, we know this too well. We have seen how heritage can be used as a weapon, destroyed to erase history, rebranded to rewrite it, or neglected to delegitimize it. My father is from Nakhichevan. He was born there, and they had to flee when he was 5 years old. If you're not familiar, Nakhichevan is a region of Azerbaijan, an exclave to southwest of Armenia. A region with a rich history of being a thriving Armenian cultural center during the medieval times. Yet not a single Armenian monument survived there out of over 27,000 large and small heritage sites and artifacts. None exists today. We have also seen how protecting heritage can become an act of resistance, a way of saying we are still here, our culture matters, and our story will not be erased. And you can see it through the extensive work conducted by Argam Ayvazyan, whose photograph is presented here in the slide, and who is a vocal advocate for the recognition of the destruction of the Armenian heritage in Nakhichevan. What we witnessed in Artsakh during the war in 2020 and afterwards, and what we continue to witness today, is alarming not only due to the destruction that has already been documented, but also because of the devastating history we've had in Nakhichevan before. So how do you prevent and how do you counter such atrocities? It has already been mentioned here that in 1954, the international community came up with the Hague Convention in order to agree upon a set of rules that can ensure the preservation of cultural heritage and human dignity in times of armed conflicts. The convention aims to safeguard cultural heritage, such as monuments, archaeological sites, and artistic or historical objects, from the effects of armed conflicts. It obligates state parties to take measures to protect cultural property, both in peacetime and during conflict, and to respect cultural property belonging to other states. The work of Blue Shield is based on international law. In particular, the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict and its two protocols of 1954 and 1999. UNESCO plays a key role in disseminating and monitoring compliance with the Convention and its protocols. The Convention emblem serves as a symbol of the Blue Shield's protective work. At its core, Blue Shield is a movement of activists who deeply care about cultural heritage and join efforts for its protection and preservation, as any heritage shall be appreciated and valued as a heritage of mankind, especially that of high artistic and cultural value. As an activist and filmmaker myself, I have worked closely with communities, institutions, and international partners to try to protect heritage. This is why, together with like-minded people, we founded Blue Shield Armenia to expand the scope of our actions and respond more effectively to the actual contexts of conflict and insecurity. The challenges we face are not just logistical, they are political, legal, and ethical. And they reveal how fragile both the national and international systems remain when it comes to protecting the cultural dimension of human life. And as you can see, Blue Shield is a network and an entity which links law, media, politics, communities together. So it is essential and fundamental for us not only to work on the political and policy-making level, but also to work directly with the communities. What we experienced in Artsakh in recent years is a stark example of this fragility. As tens of thousands of Armenians were forced to flee, they left behind not only homes, but centuries of cultural heritage: churches, fachkars, crossstones, cemeteries, inscriptions, museums, oral traditions. Much of this was neither formally registered nor protected under international law. It now risks not only neglect, but irreversible loss. One of the tools that could have helped is the special protection status provided by the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the Event of Armed Conflict. This status, which remains widely underutilized, offers enhanced legal protection to cultural sites in times of war. In Lebanon, for instance, a recent proposal includes dozens of sites nominated for this designation. In Armenia, we currently have only one site with special protection. This is the Gerard Monastery. Yet many more Armenian sites deserve this status, particularly those located along the border with Azerbaijan, where the risk of escalation remains acute. These are not just monuments of cultural or historical value. They are potential targets, and if safeguarded properly, potential bridges for future dialogue. We must treat legal instruments like special protection not as abstract legalism, but as practical tools for peace building and risk prevention. Their underuse is not a technical failure. It reflects a broader political reluctance to treat cultural heritage as a strategic and humanitarian priority. Comparative studies from Bosnia, Mali, and Lebanon demonstrate that when properly implemented, special protection can meaningfully mitigate the impact of armed conflict on cultural sites and communities. And it is not only about physically protecting the monuments, but also to study their history in depth to eventually find out that it may be multi-layered. At Blue Shield Armenia, we have tried to respond to this gap with concrete action. In 2024 and this year, supported by international partners like Europa Nostra, ALIF, and Blue Shield Austria, we led a training in cultural property study and protection for first responders, civil society organizations, and heritage professionals. It was a modest but important step. We worked along the eastern border of Armenia, including border locations such as Girants village in Tavush, Arakelot Monastery, located right on the border with Azerbaijan, Dev village in Syunik, which is again a bordering village, as well as the larger cities of the regions such as Ijevan, Goris, and Sevan. It demonstrated strong local will, but also revealed the need for more resources, better integration with state frameworks, and greater international visibility. This photograph is from yesterday, and that is why I wasn't able to attend the first day of this very important conference. And we were visiting some sites in Gerarkunik region, which is a bordering region. And just to underline and visualize what I was saying with previously, This is a fragment from our visit to Norado Cemetery, which is a major medieval historic site. And just as I mentioned, and you saw the images from the Jura Cemetery that has been destroyed completely in Nakhichevan, Norado Cemetery is the widest, largest heritage of Khachkars in one place that we have today, housing over 600 Khachkars. And what is fascinating is meeting these local wonderful women who not only are willing to guide the visitors and tell them about the history, but they do really care about it. And actually, I was honored to share one of these pins with her, lovely Miss Anahit, because she shared her story of years and decades of living next to this important heritage site, studying it with the researchers who would visit. So she would give precise information on each and every Khachkar, on the years of creation, the masters behind it and everything. And she also shared the story that one of the oligarchs actually wanted to take one of the Khachkars to his home, and she was one of the people who prevented it. So who else, if not these women and the people, the locals who carry this heritage, are the first safeguarders and the protectors of the heritage. So literally, cultural heritage is about human dignity. Unfortunately, our displaced compatriots from Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh do not have that right to implement and their traditions and to protect their heritage on site anymore. And this is very alarming for us and for the international community. Today, civil society bears too much of the burden. We step in where public institutions are distracted, where diplomacy is delayed, and where legal mechanisms are underutilized or unknown. Civil society cannot replace state action, but it can shape and strengthen it. Our work also reminds us that heritage protection is never neutral. It is inherently political. When we protect one side and not another, fund one narrative and not another, we're shaping memory and, by extension, identity and inclusion. This is why we must approach preservation not only as conservation, but as cultural justice. This framing aligns with a growing body of scholarship on heritage in post-conflict societies, where preservation is increasingly understood as a form of cultural repair and transitional justice. Cultural justice begins with recognition of diversity, of contested histories, of shared spaces, and complex identities. I will just visualize the conclusion of my talk with some spectacular views of Syunik region and its cultural heritage. The South Caucasus embodies this complexity, this multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multi-vocal. To preserve its heritage is to defend pluralism, not as an idealized past, but as a commitment to a shared future. As Armenians, we must take responsibility for protecting this richness, even when it challenges our own narratives. The future must also include strong international cooperation, legal tools like the 1954 Hague Convention and its protocols, mechanisms like the UNESCO World Heritage Convention, tools such as the ICOM Red List, and just as importantly, soft power tools. Dialogue, education, trust building, international organizations must be willing to act not only in consensus but in complexity. At the same time, we just empower local actors, not just in Armenia, but across all fragile regions. Heritage does not survive through declarations. It survives through daily care, community stewardship, and the often invisible work of those who remain when others leave. In this sense, the work of Armenian and Artsakhi NGOs, small, under-resourced, yet deeply committed, is a source of hope. It reminds us that civil society is not a secondary stakeholder, it is a pillar of cultural resilience. So let us use the legal instruments that already exist. Let us treat cultural heritage not as a peripheral concern, but as a human right and a tool of peace building and a mirror of who we are and who we aspire to become. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grigorian, for for highlighting how protection begins on the ground with awareness, preparedness, and community engagement. To build on this, it will be very interesting to reflect on how documentation itself can become a powerful tool for protection, especially in fragile and contested contexts. Our next speaker is Mr. Timothy Wallen, the John and Louise Bryson Director of the Getty Conservation Institute. He has led the Institute since 1998, guiding its global efforts to advance conservation through research, training, and fieldwork. Mr. Wallen also serves as a trustee of the National Trust for Historic Preservation and is a member of the International Advisory Board of the Cultural Institute for Conservation Program. Under his leadership, the Getty has developed pioneering tools and strategies that demonstrate how documentation can be a fundamental tool and fundamental part of heritage protection. So, Mr. Wallen, we are very pleased to have you with us, and the floor is yours.
Good. Thank you, Gayan, and thank you to my hosts for inviting me to participate in what so far has been a remarkable few days. To Paul, to Maria, to Gayan, thank you so much. I know the focus of this meeting is Armenia, but I take so much from this short time here already, and I know it will help me in my own work, as I know it will others here, so thank you. So I'm from the Getty in Los Angeles, which is a private operating foundation. My institute's mission is to advance conservation practice, so we're very much materially focused. But we do this by addressing needs in both the movable cultural heritage and the immovable cultural heritage. We create new tools, we carry out research and pursue science, convene experts, and build professional capacity. Given the focus of the GCI's work, though, I would like to relate my intervention to the panel's theme this morning, the tools and limits of international engagement. One of the areas of work that we've focused on for more than 20 years is cultural heritage inventories, which are directly relevant to the focus of emergency preparedness and response. A fundamental principle of heritage protection is that, in order to protect cultural heritage organizations require accurate, complete, and up-to-date information that identifies and describes precisely what heritage exists within their jurisdictions. Heritage inventories are also indispensable tools that serve this purpose. Typically, nation-states maintain statutory inventories of officially recognized heritage places deemed to be of national significance and worthy of protection. In the case of armed conflicts, inventories are also a key component of the second protocol to the 1954 Hague Convention, which we heard a little bit about a second ago, which obligates nations that are signatories to identify cultural heritage sites of great importance through no-strike lists and to avoid those sites during military operations. Unfortunately, nation-states do not always uphold those obligations under the convention, and some have cautioned that if no-strike lists fall in the wrong hands, they can be used intentionally to target heritage. On numerous occasions, during and after times of conflict, a variety of actors have created inventories to track damage to heritage places, sometimes through satellite remote sensing. This has served a variety of purposes, including to inform actors around the world of heritage destruction and to help determine priorities for post-conflict reconstruction. This type of work has been carried out by UN agencies, universities, NGOs, and independent researchers. When contested heritage is involved, it should be assumed that the accuracy and sourcing of such information will be heavily scrutinized. In a few cases, inventories have contributed to the legal prosecution of those involved of intentional cultural heritage destruction during armed conflicts. During the Balkan Wars of the 1990s, amid the collapse of Yugoslavia, military forces intentionally targeted, damaged, and destroyed cultural heritage sites, including places of worship. In response, independent heritage specialists carried out surveys of hundreds of cultural sites to document damage. Evidence gathered and compared with prior inventory records documented systemic international destruction of numerous cultural heritage sites. This contributed to the indictment and eventual conviction of several individuals for crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Tribunal at The Hague. Given the critical role of inventories in heritage protection and the widespread need internationally for economical and modern information technologies for this purpose, the Getty and our original partners in this work, the World Monuments Fund, in 2012 created what we call Arches. Arches is an open source heritage data management platform that is available for free to anyone worldwide. Indeed, Arches was born of conflict. It was the Getty's response to the destruction of heritage in Iraq owing to the U.S. invasion in Iraq in 2002. We created Arches as a strategic investment in helping organizations around the globe modernize information infrastructure required to manage and protect data and information about the heritage under their care. The platform is built with proven technologies specifically chosen to manage challenges that cultural heritage data presents. This includes the ability to record in detail the complex histories of contested monuments. Robust granular level security ensures that sensitive data remains protected. Organizations that use Arches maintain their own data and access to it. The Getty doesn't have that control and doesn't own that data. Over more than a decade, Arches has been implemented in more than 120 cultural heritage institutions around the world, which have documented millions of heritage places globally. Despite the widespread understanding and the importance of inventories and related surveys, practical, up-to-date guidance on how they should be created, implemented, and maintained has been substantially lacking. Last year, we published an open access book, Inventories and Surveys for Heritage Management, Lessons for the Digital Age, which is based on our more than 2 decades of experience working with heritage inventories, as well as the experiences of other international experts and organizations. We also carried out prior work in another topical area that is relevant to this convening. In 2016, we published an open access publication, Consensus Building, Negotiation, and Conflict Resolution for Heritage Place Management. It is part of another line of research and convening that we've done over more than 2 decades focused on values and economics of cultural heritage. The publication aims to promote knowledge among heritage practitioners of relevant concepts, methods, and expertise from the dispute resolution field. This includes a focus on key concepts such as interests, values from an ethical standpoint, identities and rights, and how they relate to dispute resolution processes. It provides guidance regarding the roles of different actors within dispute resolution processes, such as the importance of utilizing trusted neutral parties to convene and facilitate processes. It highlights that there are experienced experts trained in consensus building and conflict resolution that can be employed when needed. It also shares tested consensus building methods such as joint fact-finding, a process where stakeholders with varying interests and perspectives collaborate, gather facts and information to develop a common understanding. Joint fact-finding has been applied to historical questions and could be applicable to reaching consensus on the history of contested heritage. This book also contains a variety of case studies from around the world. This includes work related to heritage places referred to as sites of conscience, including sites of past political persecution, which have been actively and thoughtfully utilized to inform and promote dialogue among communities about current societal issues. Thank you, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Warren, for showing how documentation and data infrastructure can shape not only how we protect heritage, but how we understand and engage with it. And thank you for this tool, which is very important and useful, and we hope we'll be able to use it also for Armenian heritage. I would like to continue this reflection by thinking of heritage not just as something to safeguard, but as a creative and social resource for regeneration and inclusion. So I'm glad to give the floor to Mr. Yannis Avramides, Senior Director of Programs at the War Monument Fund in New York. With a background of both civil engineering and historic preservation, Mr. Amramides brings a valuable perspective of how conservation can serve not only for protection, but also regeneration, inclusion, and social cohesion. He has played a key role in developing and managing conservation strategies around the world, and he previously led the World Monument Watch, a program that brings global attention to local heritage at risk and contributed to attract attention of some Armenian monuments, such as the Basilica of Ereruik and the archaeological site of Ani. Mr. Avamides, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gayane. Thank you to Baghdasaryan and to all the co-panelists. And before I start my contribution, I just want to say to you and to all the organizers, the American University, the Armenian Society of Fellows, how meaningful it is to be back in Armenia within less than a year, and how much I appreciate the invitation, and also how thrilled I am about the work of Syra, which has been mentioned. I don't know if it's been introduced yet, Syra, and for the opportunity to contribute. So yes, indeed, I'm here representing World Monuments Fund, an international organization dedicated to saving the world's most treasured places. And for those of you who will be in the NGO forum or workshop tomorrow, I'll say more about WMF and how we work and how people can work with us. I should also say that Professor Appia, who's also here, is a member of World Monuments Fund's Board of Trustees. Okay. So since traveling to Armenia last year, I have been interested in following the discourse on Armenian heritage and its protection. And in this contribution today, I would like to just share some perspectives on Armenian built heritage and suggest what those might imply for the conservation field in the country. A prevailing discourse around built heritage follows a vulnerability paradigm, which positions heritage as being perpetually endangered and fragile and in need of protection. And in the written version, there are some citations for this. And this framing, while it reflects some tangible realities, it also serves to limit how we conceptualize the role of heritage in contemporary society. When speaking about Armenian heritage, the tangible reality that we cannot escape is the treatment of Armenian heritage sites that are outside the control of the Armenian state. And we've seen examples already today and yesterday. Often these sites face destruction, and that's aimed at denying the evidence of Armenian historical presence. And so I think that is a tragic situation, and particularly acute, knowing how Armenian national identity, which I've heard a lot about since yesterday, is deeply connected to cultural monuments and artifacts. And for this, I would cite Moranchi in 2018. But as Gayane suggested, rather than seeing heritage only as something to be defended against external threats, I would like to suggest that we also see heritage as an active resource that contemporary Armenian society can engage with dynamically, and so shifting from a defensive to a more generative stance. The creative potential of heritage is easy to see in intangible heritage, like music or performance traditions, but even built heritage allows room for dynamism, and all conservation, and I think this is consonant with what Seda Grigorian was talking about, should be seen as a form of creative cultural production in the present. So when we decide what to preserve and how to preserve it, and what stories we're telling when we do so, those choices result in the creation of meaning that is, in a sense, independent from the kind of technical aspects of preservation. And so embracing this creative dimension might allow us to recognize that the landscape of heritage conservation in Armenia can encompass much more than traditional monument conservation and protection. It can include the creative expressions of the 20th century and the recent past. And in my mind, I have the example of the stadium that we can see from the front, or the Savan Writers House that has received funding from the Getty Foundation, or urban vernacular neighborhoods like Kond in Yerevan, which you want to see tomorrow, industrial sites that represent the technological development and history of the country in the 20th century, or the heritage of other cultures in Armenia. And so preserving the heritage of other cultures can further acknowledge what I heard many times in several papers yesterday, and this will not be, I think, new to anyone in this room, that Armenian identity itself has been formed through interaction with neighboring cultures and with distant cultures, and through kind of migration and conflict and coexistence. So I have to make two asides here. First, when I was preparing for this contribution, I didn't know who exactly was going to be in this room, but I realized that at an academic conference on national identity, this point that I just made may not be so remarkable. But even so, second aside, I would like to share an example from Greece, which I think makes a similar argument. So, going around Greece, I often hear the argument that we take good care of Ottoman sites in Greece, but have you seen what's happening to Byzantine heritage in Turkey? And my reaction is that what's happening to Byzantine sites in Turkey is, of course, a big problem for Turkish society, and so it deprives Turkish citizens of the ability to be able to learn and understand and enjoy the built environment that surrounds them. But in our case, we preserve an Ottoman mosque for ourselves because it shows us that other people lived in this land before us, and it enriches it enriches our lives to know that. So we don't do that as a concession. We don't do that in the hope that Greek heritage elsewhere will be treated differently or better. So that's the aside. And to this point, I would add also that the heritage of minority communities who survive today in Armenia can also add to this richness. So this was all one point. Then another change in perspective in built heritage, similar to this point about vulnerability, shifts us from seeing heritage primarily in terms of intrinsic value to recognizing the instrumental potential that heritage has to serve societal goals, and that's also very much related to the Values Project from the Getty. And so, as an example, there's a growing tourism sector in Armenia with potential for further growth, especially for non-diaspora heritage tourism. But after having the opportunity to visit a few monuments around the country in the fall, I noticed, or we noticed, we were traveling together with Isber, that almost all historically significant sites lack interpretation materials and other visitor infrastructure, more prosaic, and that presents a clear opportunity for further development. Heritage can also promote cohesion within society as another kind of instrumental societal goal. So perhaps in the case of recent Syrian-Armenian integration, there is the potential for heritage places to serve as kind of bridges between different identities and to kind of validate the culture of repatriates without requiring them to assimilate. And then other societal opportunities surely exist. We heard about sustainability, exactly to use heritage to support environmental goals or to provide opportunities for people to engage with others or to enhance their well-being in different ways. And all of these instrumental opportunities reinforce the argument, I guess my third major point, for emphasizing those areas where Armenian institutions and communities have direct agency, without discounting the importance of international advocacy efforts, but things like strengthening heritage protection frameworks within Armenia, developing Armenian expertise in various conservation techniques, and then building educational programs around heritage. So in my last visit, I had the opportunity to engage with the Scientific Research Center for the Historical and Cultural Heritage, which is also developing, I know, management plans for all of 3 World Heritage Sites in Armenia, and also implementing restoration projects. Developing Armenian expertise in conservation techniques is also crucial, and we've been talking. I've been hearing since I was here, and also talking to Gayane about the need for better capacity in wall paintings conservation. And so, to my knowledge, there is no training program or other school that exists for wall paintings conservation in Armenia, and I think that's important, and I think it would also correct the historical bias or misconception that mischaracterized wall paintings as being foreign to Armenian culture, and that would prevent, more practically, damage caused by inadequate approaches to protection. And then lastly, the educational point, building educational programs around heritage represents another area of agency, and I know also about the National University of Architecture and Construction of Armenia and its recently established degree program in architectural heritage preservation, and I think that's very important. I'm a graduate of a similar degree program in the United States. And then beyond official institutions, I would say also creating the space for citizen activism around heritage protection is equally important. So as an overall reaction, again, while acknowledging the threats to Armenian heritage, I wonder if we might also benefit from seeing conservation as an active and creative process rather than just a protective one. And this doesn't replace international advocacy efforts like Herman Parzinger's proposal for an international multi-body coalition. That would be very effective, but might also offer additional pathways for engagement with heritage in ways that are meaningful to society today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for this presentation. And when you were speaking about the fact that destroying the heritage of a country that is not perceived as a friend country, destroying the Greek heritage in Turkey, also reminds me a project of an Armenian scholar that is made, Ujamadian. He's studying the heritage of the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. And what comes out is that his website is mostly visited by Turkish people that has lost a part of their own history. So this is also something that is a very good topic for reflection, for future reflections. And so after these very interesting inputs to close this round of reflections, I'm very pleased to give the floor to Isber Sabrin, who is the president of Heritage for Peace, a remarkable organization that has worked in some of the world's most fragile and conflict-affected regions, from Syria to Libya and beyond. I was present in one of his organized conferences, and indeed was very moving to see the difficulties in which these organizations are working in a context which is so difficult for them. And Mr. Sabrin is both an archaeologist and a peace builder, and his work is rooted in the conviction that civil society plays a critical role in protecting cultural heritage, not only through emergency response, but also by building trust, fostering dialogue, and empowering the local actors in even the most difficult context. He is also a scholar of the Spanish CNR. So, Mr. Sabrin, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kaine. It's my pleasure to be here for the second time in less than 1 year. And I am pleased as well to share some developments as well since the last visit. Thank you for the university also for the invitation and for organizing this panel. I am really optimistic after these talks and even motivated in order to do more for the protection of cultural heritage in Armenia. when I decided to have a title of my talk, I really wanted to give some practical advices based on the work that we did protecting cultural heritage in conflicts. I mean, here, when especially our experiences focused on the Arab region. So I would like to concentrate on how civil society can save and celebrate heritage in Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. The talk of our colleague really gave as well this is affirmation that really civil society is a key word in this context. We are really disappointed about how the international community treating the situation in Armenia and all of these political tensions. And we really, unfortunately, also the international law that we think that it could be an justice tool is not helping as well so much in this context. So I think, and this is something we tested, and we really believe that we need to come from the bottom down to the bottom up by the power of the people. The people are the key of making change. Here, as I said, we are from Heritage for Peace, and Heritage for Peace is an international group of heritage workers who believe that cultural heritage is a common ground for dialogue and a tool to build peace. Our mission since our foundation in 2013 was concentrated to support heritage workers indifferent of citizenship or religion as the work towards of the protection of cultural heritage for future generations. And from our work, since 6 years, we are working on a coalition of civil society organizations in the Arab regions called ANSH, Arab Network of Civil Society to Protect Cultural Heritage. And these initiatives, our values are empowering civil society, foster human rights and peace building, and also sustainable development approach. The main objectives of our initiative are empower local communities, participation in the management of cultural heritage, enhance the visibility of civil society organizations and their work, identify and define heritage protection projects needed in Arab regions, especially in conflict. So we work in Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Palestine, and also Lebanon. We do several projects, but our main projects on the ground are in Syria and in Yemen. So later I will talk and share some of those key projects that I think they could also serve in the context of Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. Then also create a network of civil society organizations to promote the protection of environment, foster inclusive economic development, and foster inclusive social development. And every year, we try to make a survey in order to understand the needs of civil society. So we do a research on needs assessment of those organizations. We have in our network around 40 NGOs in these 7 countries in conflict. So it was great to see the surveys that done by Europa Nostra, which is, I think, is a very important tool in order to understand and to plan for the future for the engagement of civil society in Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. Some key activities. So one of our projects we did as well in collaboration with Spanish National Research Council, where I am as well a researcher, an app in order to keep to the people and locals to document heritage, destroyed heritage, and as well the heritage which is in risk of being looted or is already looted. Because we need really, in countries in conflict, there are a huge danger of looting. And I now, as well, thousands of objects which they were in museums in Nagorno-Karabakh, those objects we know and a lot of great work was done before the conflict that they were brought to Yerevan. But again, we need really to think about how we can also document and use. And also there is a huge risk of the market that thousands of these objects, they will be appearing in the market. So we need really to think about how we can think about that and create as well a way that the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, they have the right of these objects. So this is a big discussion, and I think in the future there will be some work done on this issue. We create as well a program in order to train imams with heritage workers. So this is a program was designed for Syria. So we do believe that imams, they really create as well a very good understanding with the locals. And because we trying to understand the relation between Islam and cultural heritage. So Islam, because of ISIS and because of Taliban, there is this idea that Islam against cultural heritage, but it's not true. So we did a research to understand how Islam looked to cultural heritage, and with this we organized a e-learning model with many models in order to train those imams as well to promote the protection of cultural heritage with the locals. And I think in the case of Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh, the church could be really an important place where they could be more engaged as well in this kind of things. In our work, we created as well civil society initiatives in places like Raqqa, which was a capital of Islamic State. Raqqa was a capital of terror. After the liberation of Raqqa from Islamic State, we started work in 2019. And since now almost 6 years, we are working in Raqqa, and we created this civil society organization, which we now working closely with them to document and to create as well several rehabilitation projects. So here's some photos to see how was Raqqa after destruction of ISIS. But this something come as well as a final project. There is no time to talk about all the project, but this is, we created a cultural hub. So this is cultural heritage hub for the people in Raqqa. It was created as well to support especially women who suffered from the conflict, who lost their men as well during the conflict. And with this hub, we are creating 20 jobs for those women, 20 women. So the idea that they will do work by learning crafts and to as well create as well income generating projects for them. I know about the crisis of the refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh in Armenia. A lot of them are jobless, without any work. So I think, and there is a great opportunity of heritage and the crafts in order to create jobs for those refugees. Also, it's a way in order to safeguard as well their heritage and their identity. So I think that Armenian government need really to think about creating these kind of initiatives. Again, this is our other city in Syria as well. You can see here, this is a building was used by Islamic State as a jail. We rehabilitated it as well, and now it's another cultural hub for the city in Manbij. It's now we are going to do this new project funded as well by the Culture Protection Fund of the British Council. So what I want to say here, this city, we will create this hub in order to support the people making activities with their kids, with the locals, in order to promote the and to help on giving awareness about the importance of cultural heritage. Another important place where we work is Yemen, especially Taz. Taz is a city in Yemen. When we decided to work in it, was because it's divided. So it is divided between the Houthi government and as well the recognized international government, which is recognized by the international community. So making peace in Taz, it will make peace in Yemen. There is this really conclusion of the political situation in Yemen. So we decided to work on this in an iconic place, which is the castle of Taz. And in this castle, because it's iconic for the people, for all the people of Yemen, and we do a lot of activities as well with civil society, schools, universities, and as I said, it's ongoing. We are working there since three years. Again, another important initiative, which is also very close to our heart, is Palmyrene Voices, which is all of you know about the destruction of Palmyra and how this is like mainly news in the 2015 when ISIS bombed several buildings. But again, we can see how really the international community was not really very supportive, because they were talking about the destruction of Palmyra, and Palmyra was a city of 100,000 almost, and nobody was talking about the suffering of those people. All of them, they suffered, they were displaced, and the idea of creating this initiative was because of the needs of doing something for the people. I mean, we have this idea of Western, the Palmyra as a ruins, as a World Heritage Site, it's matter, but the people of Palmyra know reports on the media about those people. So we created this for the people of Palmyra, the Palmyrene Voices initiatives. So it's a civil society initiative whose mission is to provide platform for the voices of the Palmyrene people to reach the international community, to support Palmyrene people in the diaspora in their efforts to come back to Palmyra and to help them to rebuild their city in a way that guarantees their dignity and preserves their identity. And now, actually, we work with many people from Palmyra in order to rethink about what should be done in Palmyra now after the fall of Assad regime. One of the projects that we did is working with refugees in Turkey, because a lot of those people from Palmyra, they were in Turkey, and we give them grants in order to create workshops, to make handicrafts and to send them in order to support as well their economy. And this really was very successful, and we created a digital shop in order to help them to sell their crafts. Again, all of this, just I want to arrive to what we have learned and how it applies to Artsakh or to Nagorno-Karabakh. So there are a few key points which I reflected, which are really, I think, important, which we can really do something in all of these difficult contexts. So we need really to, one of the first points, community lead monitoring and early actions. So in Armenia, for Artsakh, train trusted local volunteers to map through new technologies and monitor heritage sites and set up easy reporting method like WhatsApp or shared spreadsheets. We also, another thing which is ethical and transparent digital records. So we need to keep records locally, get consent, and make as well as the heritage community and territories honor of their data. Partnering with authorities and legal foundations. We really learned how it's really important to collaborate with Armenian ministry officials, national archives, museums, or Armenian diaspora, heritage institution to work as well institutionally and strengthen local partnerships. I am Syrian, and I am in contact since my childhood with Armenian Syrian. And we consider as well, the Armenian heritage is somehow is part of our heritage. In Aleppo, there are many Armenians cultural centers, and Armenian food. So we're really very connected to this heritage, and we really hope that it will be this connection, because we need also now this connection with Armenia, especially, thousands of Armenians, they were displaced because of the Syrian conflict. All of those people also, they need to come back to Syria, and we really need to think about how we can foster this heritage as well in places like Aleppo or other places where there are Armenian Syria. Empowering youth through heritage hubs. As I said, those two examples of cultural hubs in Raqqa and as well in Minbish. So we need really to launch hubs to document heritage monuments, legends, rituals, songs. Try to also natural heritage and handing future heritage stewardships to younger generation. Thousands of young people from artisans they are in Yerevan. We can help them to create these hubs, building peer-to-peer networks. So in Artisans, we need to really to link the European and Mediterranean networks. We have create like a network of civil society and Alida Foundation. They have several as well initiatives like Yamina and Armenian heritage groups in diaspora. We know now there is some disappointing between the situation inside and diaspora. We need really to foster the diaspora to visit. And to finish, cultivating cultural and heritage stewardships. So use local schools who have refugees communities and community centers in Armenia and religious values to build a protective mandate around heritage to let people take pride in what belongs to them. Practical steps: set up local monitoring network, build open source digital database, form institutional partnership, launch youth heritage hubs, and organize regional exchange. I think we really need to move. So Armenian heritage is not just for is also international heritage. So and all of this tragedy of thousands of people who live their territories, I think making these steps, it could be really a tool as well to support them for their well-being and for their resilience and reconciliation. I am very sad to see thousands of those people. They are having many psychological problems and having a lot of difficulties to be integrated as well in Armenia. So doing all of this, I think it could be a good steps to support them and to give them a safer place to enjoy their identity and their cultural rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for this example of incredible activity and good results, and for the suggestion you're giving for the context here. And we are now starting to have some questions, and would like to start with Professor Partzinger. As you noted that in conflict zones such as Nagorno-Karabakh, heritage is being used to legitimize exclusionary narratives. And for your experience, I mean, Europa Nostra is an organization that is trying to put all together. So how can international actors respond effectively without themselves being politicized? We are in a context where, for instance, working with Europe concerning Nagorno-Karabakh is sometimes very difficult and sensitive, and so I'm very interested in your opinion on that.
Well, I think it must be completely clear that any person, anybody who is engaged in heritage, has to be strictly evidence-based and is based on the scientific facts. And I always thought that those who are really trying to twist heritage and history to tell strange stories, they are capable also to destroy heritage. And what I see, I wrote in 4 years ago, I published a book about the intentional destruction of heritage. There was the pandemic, I had time, I thought this is a topic, I get that I collected some material and always wanted to write this book. And it starts from the early beginning of man, and it ends up, of course, until nowadays, and it will continue, unfortunately. But what I see is, starting, of course, Second World War, it started, but also in the last decades, we have more and more conflicts, and heritage becomes one of the main targets. Think about the Yugoslavian war in the 1990s, now what you see in Nagorno-Karabakh, Ukraine, in Syria and Iraq, ISIS. So it becomes one of the main targets. And this is really concerning, very much concerning. I see even a tendency, as always, heritage has been destroyed intentionally, but there is a certain tendency. And I think we must gather all forces really to fight against that. And this is not easy. And but I think we have to come back, and what you see now in Ukraine, again against the identity, because for me, on the other hand, it shows, so concerning it is, but it shows that cultural heritage has enormous power. Because why it becomes a target? Because it's really, it has to be attacked by these people, so that we have to protect it. And I think we need strategies. And the question is, when I see all what these institutions gathered here, what they are doing, and the last one, but all of them, fantastic work. How can we really combine our forces in a way? We need this plurality of actions, of foundations, of organizations. But how, in a way, can we gather all these activities that we are more effective, perhaps?
Thank you very much. And also, what I think is important is to help the weakest populations to raise their voices. Because if we take the example of Nagorno-Karabakh, we see that Azerbaijan is putting huge efforts there. Since the 70s, they are rewriting all the literature. So they're changing the history from writing theories to destroying physically the monuments. So indeed, there is the need of help from the international organizations. And so I think also the Getty can play a very important role with their program that emphasizes the importance of accurate, independent inventories as a foundation for heritage protection. So in context of conflict or contested memory, the process of documenting heritage can become indeed a political act itself, because also you have to choose what to document and how, and you have to decide about terminology, typology, and values, which may be subjective or biased. And even the name of a site can be very controversial sometimes. So from your experience, how can international experts intervene to describe or categorize a heritage site, especially when that site is politically sensitive or ideologically contested? How can one navigate these complexities from the outside, ensuring that the process remains inclusive and credible, even when the heritage in question reflects more than one history and more than one truth?
There's a lot in that question.
Sorry for the...
Well, I would first say that I think inventories are, particularly if they're carried out by a government or an agency, they are political. They just simply are political. And that can't be avoided. But I think what's important from our experience is the earlier you get involved in creating the inventory, and the broadest group of people you bring together to deal with exactly the issues you're talking about, taxonomies, how you describe things, what dates are, you begin to create a more neutral platform or a less contested platform. I think utilizing in issues, if you look at what happened in the Balkans or even what's happened in this region, there are multiple inventories that you can use to compare and understand the various stories. I think in a place like your country here, having an inventory is incredibly valuable, not just for the identification of places, because you know where they are and what they are, but it's a legacy. But more importantly, it provides the world and the public access to this information. Inventories are not just locked up in drawers, ideally. If they sit on electronic platforms, they provide the world with information about places and about everything that is related to that particular site. So I just think getting ahead of the question is the most important thing. And there's no reason that any organization, any country, any agency shouldn't be investing in them from the earliest moment.
Thank you very much. And so, Mr. Sabrin, you come from a country that suffered years of conflict that impacted dramatically also on the heritage, as you were very well explained. So, which is the ethical and emotional weight of heritage erasure, and how to defend dignity and historic truth in such difficult contexts?
Actually, before the conflict in Syria, I was studying my professional life as an archaeologist and as a tourist guide, and it was really amazing, to see how Syria, just a few years before the conflict, was opening and having people from all around the world coming to visit Syria. Yeah, actually, it was at the time when the conflict started, I was in Spain, and actually, I was traumatized. How could be? Yeah, just 1 month before that, I was with the tourists, and in 1 month, everything it changed. So it took me times to understand the new reality. And it was so difficult, so difficult. My vision of my future, of my life, was built on Syria without conflict. So being outside Syria, trying to observe what is happening, and also thinking about my future, I decided that I really need and to dedicate as well my future to work on this, because before that I was thinking about coming back to Syria, doing management of cultural heritage, and coming back to make the management of this heritage. But the war and the tragedy of the war, and especially people, something it was really very difficult to think how all of this changed in just 1 or 2 days. The people who were enjoying and working like as a tourist guides in Palmyra or restaurants, which I have a lot of emotional connection with them because of my work, and all of those people, they became refugees. They became they have member families who they are killed. All of this, dramatic, fast change. So yeah, I decided that I need really to do something to help, and I to somehow, this work also for me was a healing, was at least, I decided I have 2 choices, being frustrated and sad and traumatized, or going to be strong and do something to support, And as I said, when I started with the creation of Heritage for Peace, I am the co-founder with René Teichler, who passed away 3 years ago, unfortunately. And he has experience in Iraq and in Afghanistan and other places. So this work was for me really a way to heal and to support my mental health. And as well, when you see people who are really able to do the work with me and supporting as well, something very important, which also we learned, that heritage as well, protection in conflict also is a humanitarian action. So all of these projects, one of the most satisfaction thing is that we are creating job for people who has like destroyed economy. Every project, it's really a way as well to contribute to this the economy of those people, and this is also one of the things which at least you make something small, but you make a better life for many people. So this is the thing which I. To somehow this work also supported me as well to continue doing this work and to motivate do more as well, because the situation is dramatic, and really we need to move and to do things.
Thank you very much. Indeed, you touch a very significant aspect of our work, that is the attention to the people who work on the heritage, who lives near the heritage and takes all their tradition. Their feelings are very attached with this heritage. And their empowerment is very important through training and capacity building. And this takes us to reflect on how heritage preservation can then should shift from a defensive practice to a more inclusive and generative one. So, Mr. Avramidis, you invite us to move beyond a vulnerability paradigm and see heritage not just as something to defend, but as something generative. And how can this shift be practically encouraged in environments marked by recent trauma and ongoing threats, where the majority thinks that there are other priorities and this is not something to invest on?
Yes, thank you, Gayane. So a few thoughts on this question. So, of course, I presented this in the context of Armenia. I think the point about vulnerability is a challenge for the heritage field writ large. And having said that, again, I don't want to overstate the case. I mean, I'm talking about a shift in emphasis. I mean, a shift in framing. I'm not saying there's a kind of wholesale something that needs to be turned upside down. But yes, I think I want to argue for something more, let's call it regenerative, something that's kind of a little less precious. And I think a place to see this is often in post-disaster contexts where there's, an idea about, instead of recovery, instead of returning to, to the situation as it was before the event, again, doing something that enhances resilience, enhances the future potential, perhaps at some, cost to what we might think of as some of the commonplaces of heritage conservation. So a very simple example is I was recently in Turkey, in Antakya, where my organization is involved in reconstruction following the earthquakes in 2023, and not just WMF's work, but the work throughout the city. Just, again, a very practical example, a lot of reconstruction taking place on historic monuments, monumental buildings, a lot of religious sites, and you see a lot of them are getting reconstructed, and to, I think, enhance seismic resilience in the future, a lot of them are getting rebuilt using glue laminated timber. The vaults and the arches, it will be the kind of the same form. It will be the same sense of space, the same appearance of the monument, but at really reducing the weight that's borne by the building, and making, I think, making those buildings, I think, much more kind of resilient to future events. So, just a simple example. I think it also points to how this is an issue facing just the field itself, and how it thinks about its own practices. There's by no means a new idea here, but a lot of questioning about what exactly material authenticity represents. So I think that's one other area where this comes up. And then again, you placed a lot of concerns in your question, and I don't want to lose track of the last one, which I think had to do with where can you say that again? The dominant
which are the priorities for in the intervention in an environment where there is trauma.
Yeah.
So what we should concentrate on before is the first thing, because often people and government think that priorities are others, but sometimes culture is very important from the social point of view, and is somehow a way of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so the healing point is very important. In that kind of context, I would say that what we want to do is to allow for authentic kind of expressions of what people want, what people desire, to and their needs to experience culture, for cultural it does not, we're talking about built heritage, that is what a lot of us are engaged in, but of course we're also talking about access to cultural opportunities, libraries, schools, archives, museums. So allowing those to emerge from the bottom up, I think is very important. I will.
Okay, thank you very much. And turning to the operational side of things, so reflecting of this importance of everything, this leads to another key question to you, Mrs. Grigorian. So you work closely with first responders and local actors, and what have you learned, and how can this be scaled up and used for improving the situation?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, there are many aspects to take into consideration. I think first and foremost, since we're still very fresh after the conflict, which is still lingering along the, or at least near the eastern border of Armenia. I think we're still in the process of a shift of a mindset as a nation in general, and I believe this is something that has been discussed here throughout the conference sessions since yesterday. What I see when we talk to people in the bordering villages and towns is that emergency preparedness is something that is still foreign to us, and we fear it because having to face the fact that we need to be ready to certain events really alarms these people that maybe something is coming up. So their first reaction is fear, which is something I think we need to overcome as a society in general, and we need to understand that emergency preparedness needs to become a daily practice in general, in Yerevan, in the bordering villages, everywhere, and it needs to be introduced to different aspects of our daily life. So this is something that's generic. But in terms of cultural heritage preservation and protection, of course, as a civic society organization, we work closely with our governmental partners, we work closely with our international partners in order to bring in also the international expertise. And I would really like to thank our guests, especially Yanis and Isber. It's only been months since our last meeting in October, but you came today with so many thoughtful and practical suggestions to be implemented in Armenia with the focus of Artsakh Armenians. We've been in touch with Mr. Sabrin since last year to focus on intangible cultural heritage protection for Artsakh Armenians as well. So this connections, this network that we can build together is one of the keys to have a better structure in place, also for the government and for the civil society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all of you. I had a few other questions, but the time is our enemy, so we need to close. We just finished the panel, and then we can open to the audience. Well, heritage can serve indeed as a bridge between communities, disciplines, and over and opposing narratives. And really, this exchange has been really enriching, and we hope in the next hours to continue to discuss on these future collaborations that I think they are key to tackle with these problems. And so before we conclude, it's important to return to the human dimension that underlies all of our reflection on heritage. So the communities for whom heritage is not abstract, but is part of their lived identity and memory. So I'm very honored to have here and to give the floor to Mr. Geramt Stepanyan, the human rights defender of Artsakh, for a concluding reflection on what it means to protect cultural heritage when a people has been displaced from it, and on the broader implication for rights, dignity, and historical justice. Mr. Stepanyan holds a degree in international relations and has built his professional career around the protection of human rights, with a particular focus on civilian protection in conflict zones. Before being appointed ombudsman in 2021, he served in various roles related to youth policy, civil society engagement, and legal advocacy in the Republic of Artsakh. He has been a key figure in documenting violations of humanitarian and cultural rights and in raising international awareness about the challenges faced by the people of Artsakh, especially in relation to the loss of access to their historical and cultural heritage. His voice reminds us that behind every threatened monument, there is a community, a memory, and a struggle for justice that cannot be ignored. Mr. Stepanyan, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers for insightful discussion. And I think that our speakers have given us a great analysis of why it's so important to protect our cultural heritage. They have explained the systems we have, the roles everyone plays, and the need to make our policies even better. And sadly, as conflicts spread, cultural sites are more and more at risk of being destroyed, and this means we need to work together. And in this respect, community organizations need experts and need international community to be more ready to face all these challenges. I'm not a direct expert, but my work is deeply connected to this issue because cultural rights are human rights. That's why my work focuses also on raising awareness about the violations of the cultural rights of Artsakh people and supporting efforts to preserve Armenian heritage in Artsakh. So the topic of this panel hits very close to for me and for all the people of Artsakh. When we talk about the crisis, we, the displaced people, don't see it as an idea. We live it. It's a raw, painful experience that seeing our culture erased, being forced from our homes, and watching the ties of our history being cut. So today I am here, first of all, as a person whose heritage has been lost and whose identity is in serious danger. What does heritage mean to people who have been displaced? We have heard today that it's not just about old buildings or artifacts, and that is true. For people who have been uprooted from their ancestral lands, heritage becomes everything. It is your past, your present, and your hope for a future. We can speak about what heritage means to people of displaced people very long, but I want to focus on two key ideas that today were mentioned. The first is that cultural heritage is a part of identity and protecting it is key to protecting who we are. So for displaced people, this isn't just an idea, it's a daily struggle, a source of suffering and a part of our memories and dreams. Let's first talk about the built heritage we left, the silent witness of our history. These are our churches, monasteries, ancient crossstones, and even our simple homes that we left in Artsakh. They have stood for centuries, representing our Christian faith, our strengths, and our unique culture. Let me be very direct. What is Ghazanchetsot's Holy Saviour Church in Shushi to cultural experts or to international community? It is a beautiful 19th century church. But what is it to Armenians? What is it to Artsakh peoples? And what is it to Shushi people? For us, it is so much more. For many, it was the landmark they saw from their window, a site that inspired their morning prayers. For thousands of children, the courtyard was a playground. For thousands of couples, it was where they got married. And for parents, it was where they baptized their children. It was a place of worship and a place to find peace. Personally, for me, the Holy Saviour is where I was baptized and found my peace every time being emotionally overwhelmed. Now it's gone. It's far away and I can't even visit it as a tourist. I use this church example, but this feeling applies to all our spiritual and cultural monuments under Azerbaijani control. We are connecting to each one of them by unbreakable threads. But beyond our spiritual heritage, our identity is also at risk from the destruction of our political landmarks. A clear example is the total demolition of Artsakh parliament building by Azerbaijan. Even though it was built in 2005 and it is not a traditional historical site, it was a huge part of our identity. It was where decisions about our fate were made for years, for 30 years. It stood for the democracy of our small republic, which we fought so hard to create. So its destruction was a clear symbolic act by Azerbaijan. So every time when we see our heritage in Artsakh destroyed, our identity is also destroyed. Our identity faces a huge existential challenge. Unfortunately, it's not just our physical monuments in Artsakh that are at risk. Our intangible heritage, our traditions, stories, songs, and language is also in serious danger. It's so hard to keep these things alive when a community is scattered across different lands. How do you protect a lullaby when the grandmother who sang it is living in a temporary shelter far from her grandchild. How do you keep a dialect alive when its speakers are spread across different cities, villages, even countries? How do you perform a traditional dance when the village square, where it was practiced for generations, is gone? These are very important questions. Intangible heritage lives within the community. It is passed through shared experience and daily life. When the community is broken up and displaced, this process is broken too. This isn't a sudden disruption, it's a slow fading, a gradual loss as new generations grow up without the cultural environment that kept these traditions alive. Our language, our unique Artsakh dialects, our stories, our food traditions, and our crafts are all in danger. And I regret to say that we do not see any coordinated strategies or policies by the government of Armenia in preserving our intangible cultural assets. If we did, the risks of losing this heritage would be neutralized. And it takes incredible constant efforts from our people, from community organizations, from supporting organizations to keep these living traditions alive so that our identity doesn't become just a footnote in history. The second idea I want to talk about is the link between culture and hope, which has been also mentioned several times today. Displaced people feel this link deeply. Every time a monument is destroyed, it hurts our hope for the future. It hurts our hope to return home. Our heritage is one of the most important things that calls us back to Artsakh. I must say honestly that when I go into any church in Armenia, I subconsciously look for Gandzasar, for Dadivan, or another church from Artsakh. This search shows that my hope for return is still alive, and I need to keep it that way. However, every time when I see new evidence of vandalism on social media, that hope is threatened too. And it is an undeniable truth that protecting cultural heritage also means keeping hope alive in people. Dear colleagues, I want to thank you again for this important discussion once again, and on behalf of the people of Artsakh, ask you once again to keep the issue of preserving our cultural heritage in the spotlight. And we are ready to be part of it and to support all such initiatives. And let me conclude with one very simple and very meaningful sentence. When you lose your land, your heritage becomes the last and the most important territory you live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turpanjian, for this very strong message. And indeed, we should never forget how the protection of heritage also impacts the protection of people, their rights, identity, and their memory. So after such a rich and multi-layered conversation, we are all filled with ideas and perhaps also with a sense of vertigo of the complexity and scale of the challenge ahead. And so I'm very thankful for all these participants, and I hope that can yours to the end of the picture.